Judgment, judgment, judgment. Final judgment, final judgment, final judgment, final
What is up, sports fans? It's the Final Judgment here with Tony Jigsaw Cutillo. Little day late, right? But just understand something. Thursday night football reigns supreme, right? So listen, I enjoy watching football. So on Mondays and Thursdays, if it's a really good game, I possibly may go the next day or maybe late. But for the most part, you'll always be live here on Heat Ratio and Win Daily Sports. Make sure you're following at Heat Ratio Sports. Make sure you're following at Win Daily Sports. Listen, Heat Ratio Sports for all your sports needs, at Win Daily Sports for all your sports betting and DFS fantasy needs. We got so much kind of content there. It's been phenomenal. Adam already checking in. What's up, Adam? It's a Friday morning. I would say it's glorious. Like Bobby Roode, who I still think they screwed that whole mantra up because I think he had something really good going there. But got to go see the orthopedic surgeon today. Hopefully, it's nothing too serious on the leg, but we're going to find out today. So I'm still relegated right here to the studio to talk to all of you. So get ready for NFL Week 2. Great game last night between the Chiefs and the Chargers. Gutsy performance. I should say Philadelphia performance from Justin Herbert out there gutting it out with the bad ribs, throwing a laser at the end to just give them a shot. They were a couple bounces away from getting an onside kick. But again, how special is Patrick Mahomes as well? Even on a bad game, he makes good plays. A lot of questionable plays, which brings me, I tweeted it out. A lot of questionable plays, but so all those Jalen Hurts haters out there and those analytic wizards that say Jalen Hurts can't throw and he can't do this, are they picking apart Patrick Mahomes too? I probably not. Okay, so that's one of my issues as always. But we got a few judgments to get into. Number one, listen, judgment number one is going to be Jonathan Gannon as a defensive coordinator for the Philadelphia Eagles. I mean, listen, it's only week one, people, right? I mean, these people are already talking about throwing this guy off the ship and we're going to have replacements in the offseason. I mean, can we just enjoy week one football? We did win the game. At the end of the day, I know we have some adjustments to make, but my God, I mean, we're talking 5 months ahead in the offseason saying that we're going to have a new D coordinator. So I think that's something that we really have to touch. And I want to hear your judgment on that too. Is it too early to be talking about that? Judgment number two. We have so many fun things for the show. We're going to talk the Ravens. Okay. Each week I'm trying to bring you a great NFL mind. This week we bring Cordell Woodland of 105.7 The Fan, who covers the Ravens, to understand the mantra of Harbaugh and Jackson. What's going on with the Lamar Jackson saga? Why is he disrespected? Is he the most disrespected player in the NFL? We're going to get into all that. I'm telling you, if you like opinionated people like myself, you're going to love Cordell. Make sure you're giving him a follow at Cordell Woodland on Twitter. A fantastic, fantastic mind when it comes to the world of football. And then judgment number three is a little fun one. We're going to talk big three. I like the big three kind of concept. And I kind of stole this off a CBS Sports poll, but they were talking 4, and I took 3 of 4 from each team. And if you're going into a blacktop game and you go 3-on-3, I want to know, are you rolling with Giannis, Steph, and Luka, or Embiid, LeBron, and Dame? That's going to be judgment number 3. And then we have some random judgments that we'll talk about. And then obviously the Jigsaw Chronicles, the double-sided penalty in football. We got to talk about that because that annoys the hell out of me. As always, Heat Ratio, Win Daily Sports, brought to you here by SEObrand.net. We got more to come on that on Monday. Big announcement. Can't wait for that. You see the logo right there on the bottom of the screen. And all of you for tuning in and subscribing. We're up to, I think, 727 or 720, something like that, subscribers, trying to get to 1,000. So if you can, make sure you go to the Final Judgment. Very important. Go to the Final Judgment on YouTube and hit subscribe. If you're watching this on Heat Ratio and Win Daily Sports YouTube, you're probably already subscribed, which is great. We love you. But if you can you go to the Final Judgment page as well and hit subscribe on that as well? And also the podcast. Look for the podcast, the Final Judgment at Tony Cutillo. There's a link in there on all your formats. You can get in there and make sure you drop me a review. Let me know what I'm doing wrong. Let me know what you like. Whatever. I'm here for you. But let's get right into this defensive coordinator situation. And I've talked to a lot of people, and I've seen a lot of people's takes and trying to read everybody's understanding. And I get nobody's happy. I get it. We didn't blitz enough. We didn't have enough issues. I mean, we talked about it on Heat Ratio Live, me, Nick, and Al on Tuesday night. My thing is, it is only week one, and there's a lot of things going on. A lot of stuff going on behind the scenes that we're not even aware of. And it's hard for me to really comment after 1 week of football before I even allow somebody to make adjustments. I mean, the biggest thing in the NFL is making adjustments as a player and as a coach. So we have to give these guys a benefit of the doubt to go back in to the lab, cook up something different, and come out and make adjustments. I mean, this isn't just for the Philadelphia Eagles. And I know everybody says the Philadelphia Eagles is this overanalyzed, almost got tongue tied on a Friday morning, overanalyzed fan base. But the thing is, this goes all around the NFL. And it's kind of like that in your face must have right now kind of game because it's highly, action packed. And I get that. But sometimes you got to draw it back a little bit. So many teams. I mean, look at last year, for instance. Everybody, and even this year, you see everybody counting out Green Bay. And I'm for one, it doesn't feel right out there in Green Bay. But last year, everybody counted out Green Bay, and they went on a huge streak, to finish out the season. So, we do have to understand too. This was a league where we didn't have much as far as preseason football. We dropped the game. A lot of teams adopted the no contact practices, the no play in the preseason. I know the Ravens were one of them. You're going to hear that later when we talk to Cordell. But a lot of this, takes the fact that we also have an extra week of football. So we have to look at that. We have to look at what are these coaches going to do? Are they giving themselves a mulligan week? Right? I know it sounds crazy, but maybe they're giving themselves a mulligan week in the sense that if we're going to try anything, we have that 1 week cushion, right? Because we have the extra game, which I still think it's going to be interesting to see how these teams use that last game. Are they going to have a rest period within, besides the bye week? Are they going to have a rest period within the entire season where they say we may rest some players? It's going to be interesting, but that all brings me back to it's only week one. And of all people, listen, me. I'm very, I want it now on demand, right? I've been that way. It's where I get the name Jigsaw, right? Because in your face, want it now. But I think this is one of the instances where we learn to wait and see what happens. Remember, there's also a lot of new pieces on the defense. CJ Johnson, brand new piece. Jordan Davis, Nakobe Dean, brand new pieces. Kaiser White, brand new piece, right? Hassan Reddick, brand new piece. BG coming back from injury. I mean, there's a lot of different pieces to this puzzle here. James Bradbury, brand new piece. Maybe, just maybe the defensive coordinator needs to figure out how to put these guys in the best position. Not the mock Andy Reid about saying, the great Andy Reid, I should say, about saying we need to put our players in best position to make plays. But it is true, right? It's very hard. We all say on paper, all the time. On paper, they have a great defense. On paper, they have a great team, but they have to go out and play the game. And I think that's what we need to wait here. We need a wait and see approach. And I think that's what Jonathan Gannon was doing, the same thing. Let me see what I actually have, what works best. I guarantee you, and it's going to be tough. They're going to come out with a different defensive system on Monday night. It's 100%. Adam checking in. He says, I think Gannon is doing something he did last year, and he got a lot better players than he did last year. Right. I mean, that's been an argument. So basically, what I'm saying is, last year it was the excuses, right? It was, I don't have the players to fit my system. This year he has the players, and he's almost making the same excuses. Again, it's week one. I'll agree with you at week six, really. And around the NFL, this is what's crazy to me. And this is why I always say we just don't know. But around the NFL, this is a guy who has the respect of so many in the sense that he was talked up to being a head coach already after 1 year as a defensive coordinator where he really wasn't that good. So they must respect him and his abilities. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's because of obviously the nostalgia factor of the last name, the football brethren, so to speak, but something's going on to where they want to elevate this guy to that next top in the next spot. And right now, I think as far as Philadelphia, we just have to wait and see for at least a couple more weeks. At least let's see what we have because we also don't know the physicality limitations of some of these players, right? Brandon Graham coming off a major, major injury at 32, 33 plus years old. That's something that may take some time. Fletcher Cox is a reason why they released him and brought him back, not just because of the money figure, but because they thought, you know what, maybe his best days are behind him. And I think we all know that as well, right? Josh Sweat is probably the biggest key. You lose Derek Barnett to a torn ACL. Not saying that I was a huge Eric Barnett fan, but Josh Sweat is probably your most promising defensive pass rusher on that line besides Hassan Reddick. Kazir Wright's going to run all over the field and make plays. He's not going to rush the passer, right? You have the cornerbacks to tighten up coverage out there and play bump and run if you need to. Play man-to-man. We get all that. Right, I saw them bring Avonte Maddox a couple times on a blitz. I think you'll see that more often. I think you'll see C.J. Johnson more often. I just think you need time. Just think you need time. And listen, if we can waste time and develop a better system while we can win football games, I think it's the best medicine you can ask for. And I think that's what's going on right now. So again, judgment is, are we overreacting? Or should I say, though, is Philadelphia overreacting way too early to the Jonathan Gannon talk about him already being ousted by guys like Vic Fangio coming in here in the offseason and taking over the defense? It's just, it's crazy to me that we're talking about that already. But again, that's something that, we will continue to talk about. It'll continue to develop, as the weeks go on. But again, that's why we love this game. Judgment number 2. And we're going to get into the random judgments. I like that because I like to go like in the news. But before we get into judgment number 2, we talk about the Ravens, and I bring in Cordell Woodland to talk about, John Harbaugh and Lamar Jackson. It's a fantastic interview. Again, make sure you're following at Cordell Woodland on Twitter. Does a lot of work, covers the Orioles and the Ravens for 105.7 The Fan out of Baltimore. I'm going to play about 20 minutes of the interview. The full interview is about 28 minutes long. Fantastic stuff. It'll be podcasted on the Final Judgment. It'll be on the Final Judgment YouTube page as well. Fantastic stuff. Make sure you go and check that out. But just like in the news judgments, like one thing that stuck out to me this week, and I'd love to get your judgment on this, is in Taiwan, nursing home apologizes for hiring a stripper to entertain disabled veterans. So supposedly, again, this is straight on Yahoo. You can go check it out, right? There's a nursing home, group of veterans in wheelchairs. It says got more than mooncakes for Mid-Autumn Festival after a nursing home in Taiwan enlisted the services of a lingerie-clad stripper to celebrate the Chinese holiday. Listen, the stripper spent 15 minutes dancing for retired Army personnel who are dealing with dementia and other disabilities. I mean, at the end of the day, people, can these people just have a little fun? I mean, there's no harm in it. I mean, why do we make these gigantic stories and talk about how, when do we just celebrate life? I mean, these women and men, listen, it's both. It's men and women veterans here that have put their lives on the line and now are disabled for fighting for the country that we so love. And they're suffering from dementia. Their lives are not the same. They have plenty of disabilities, and we can't even give them the satisfaction to have a little fun. And who are we to say what's fun and what's not? Right? I'm not saying, listen, everybody gets their own fun in their own special way. But why do we have to lay judgment on that? I mean, listen, let these people just have some fun. It was all in good fun. Not to use the word fun, but come on, it was all good humor. At the end of the day, there was nothing wrong with it. Obviously it made headlines news. So now, the nursing home had to come out and they had to give an apology, which I don't even think they need it, to be honest with you. It says viral footage filmed an attendee shows one of the vets getting a handful of breasts as the stripper twerks over his wheelchair. And the stripper is laughing at the same time. I mean, come on. Like, what else is going on? Nothing. They weren't showing no skin or anything like that. It was all good fun. Listen, I'm not trying to demean anybody or anything like that. Listen, I'm not. I'm just saying, whether it was a guy or a girl, I don't think it matters. What my point is, like, just let these people have some fun. That's all I mean, how much more time do they have left? And they already are relegated to a nursing home and a wheelchair, and their mind is mush and their body is breaking down. Just let them have a little fun. That's all. Like Cyndi Lauper said, let's, instead of saying girls want fun, just say we just want to have some fun. That's all. Everybody just wants to have some fun. The veterans want to have some fun. Let them have some damn fun. So now we're going to get into judgment number 2. The Baltimore Ravens. Listen, obviously the Baltimore Ravens ring close to home to us because of John Harbaugh, who started off as special teams coach here in Philadelphia. He's part of the Andy Reid tree. And I'll be honest with you, I would love to hear from you guys. I always said, and I said this in the interview with Cordell, that two guys that are on my top list if I was starting an NFL franchise to be a head coach is Mike Tomlin and John Harbaugh. Both of these guys are players, coaches. Both of these guys stand the test of time. There's a reason why they've been tenured for so long with their original organization. They had the respect of the players. They had the respect of management. They have the respect of fans, and they get results done their way. And as you're going to hear in this interview, about the way that, what if John Harbaugh wasn't the coach of the Ravens? Would that, would it have been a detriment to the growth of Lamar Jackson? And I completely agree with Cordell when I say I think it would have been. And what he's been able to do with that team has been nothing short of amazing. So again, this is going to be Cordell Woodland talking about NFL Week 1 recap for the Baltimore Ravens, talking a lot of Lamar Jackson and John Harbaugh. This is a 20-minute segment. Grab your popcorn, grab a drink. Whether you're listening to this on podcast, you're watching this live on YouTube or on replay, check it out. I'm going to tell you right now, a lot of great stuff right here. And again, if you want to listen to the full interview, just go to the Final Judgment on YouTube. Go to the podcast on YouTube, the Final Judgment with Tony Cutillo, and the full interview from Cordell Woodland will be podcasted there. Again, at Cordell Woodland on Twitter. Check it out and enjoy. Welcome. It's Tuesday right here. It's the day after, man. This is the most exciting week, week 1 NFL. And what better way on the Final Judgment here with Tony Cutillo than to get a judgment from the Baltimore Ravens. Again, make sure you're following at the Final Judgment on all social formats, at Judge Jigsaw on Twitter, on Instagram. But man, I got a great guest today because there was a lot of offseason hype around Lamar Jackson, he declines the contract. Is it going to be in his head? Is he going to be the same Lamar, not having an agent, doing everything himself? But man, pretty convincing win, 24-9. What I did was I reached out to Cordell Woodland that covers the Baltimore Orioles and Ravens. Orioles having a fantastic year as well. Ravens for 105.7. The Fan, also host of Shaking It Up Sports. He was on with Sirius with us on the Win Daily Show probably about 3 weeks ago, talking about the Baltimore Ravens. Very educated, very opinionated. I love every minute of it, so I had to get him on. Cordell, thanks for coming on, man.
No problem, man. I appreciate you reaching out. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, it's going to be fun, man. Week 1 in the NFL, I mean, we lived for this. Baseball, great. Hats off. NBA, great, but there's nothing like the NFL is king. A lot of issues coming in this year with Lamar, especially right at the deadline, decides to decline. Everybody's talking about money. And before I even get to his play, I'll be honest with you, I can't stand when people talk about money because they act like they can kind of relate when they can't. Like, they don't understand. Like, the money is there, right? Like, stop talking about it's not your money. Okay. Like, me and you, that money, yeah, it's great. We would love to make that, but that's the market. So we can't just say, he doesn't know what he's getting, because there's a lot of things that go into that. But he comes in, declines the contract. All right. They think it's going to be a detriment on his play. But if week 1 is any sign, that world obviously seems to be false. Do you expect Lamar Jackson to have another spectacular season with this extra motivation? And did you expect this coming out against the Jets?
Yeah, I have to say I did. Lamar came into camp looking like a different guy. Definitely has put on a couple of extra pounds. Everybody loves to talk about what Lamar can't do, and they love to make it seem like Lamar can't throw the ball. This is a guy who's been a unanimous MVP winner. And a Heisman winner. You're not getting to that level if you can't throw the ball. The man can throw the ball, but he came in and to mini camp this year. He missed OTAs and had a couple people worried, but he showed up to mini camp, and the offense just woke up. The first day that he showed up, you could clearly see he had been working on his throwing mechanics and trying to become more of a consistent passer. And I know everybody had their concerns going into the week 1 situation because of all the noise surrounding his contract situation, which isn't going away anytime soon. I mean, he could put his deadline out there, and I know the Ravens put out a statement saying that they couldn't reach an extension, but every week now, it's going to be every pass is going to turn into a contract negotiation. Every game is a contract negotiation. So, after he goes and he plays well against the Jets, you got all of Ravens Twitter like, oh, pay the man. But as soon as he has a subpar game or a down game, it's, this is why you can't pay Lamar Jackson. So this is just a game that we'll be playing the rest of the year. Whether it's right or wrong is another scenario, but it's just real life. And I didn't think that his contract situation would necessarily have him go out there and play poorly. If anything, I thought it would be a motivator. There's been a lot of talking about Lamar all off season. You got, GMs, undescribed GMs that want to, anonymous GMs, I should say, that want to put out lists and leave Lamar off of it. And it's like everybody on a national level continues to try to find reasons why Lamar isn't elite. And all he does is go out there and show you time and time again. And this week, it wasn't even with his legs. It's with his arm. He's throwing 3 touchdowns. He only ran 6 times, had 17 yards. And I don't know how often that'll be the case throughout the year. But it was a 3rd down run that Lamar had on a scramble that he scrambled for 8 yards to get the first down. I mean, and it was just so Lamar. It was just how he had to maneuver in the pocket and get away from like 3 different guys. It's only a couple of players that can do it the way he does it. It's easy for him. He's a game changer. And I think that as going into the season, the Ravens have the benefit of playing a somewhat of a subpar schedule this year, with them being in the last place in the AFC North last year. They have a last place schedule right now. So I think he and the rest of the team will benefit from that. But I do expect Lamar to get back into that MVP conversation that he was in last year before he got hurt.
Yeah, listen, you make a great point, and it's a great segue into the next question, because I listen, this was an off season where we saw Deshaun Watson get guaranteed paydays, right? So, and you think about that as a quarterback, you're thinking, wait a minute, like you're kind of going at me, not giving me my figure, where this guy's not even in the league right now, right. And we knew all the adversity facing him, we knew it was going to happen, and you still paid the guy, but I still have to fight. And you made a great point, because number one, I was going to bring up the rushing game, which thank you for that, because that's the first thing I looked at. I was like, wow, this wasn't even prototypical Lamar. I mean, right. 6 for 17, that's not him. And I love it. Because that plays away from the narrative that he's just a running quarterback and that he can't make these throws. And those 2 throws to Duvernay were pretty special. Now, we'll get to that later, but speaking of Lamar, I mean, honestly, you said it. He seems like a guy who can't get the respect he deserves no matter what his performance is. I have to say, man, I'm going to ask you, I know he's mine, but is he the most underappreciated player in the league right now?
I think so. If nothing else, he's definitely the most over scrutinized player in the league right now, the most disrespected player in the league right now. What other unanimous MVP gets talked about the way that Lamar gets talked about? What other MVP is left off of any type of positional ranking? I mean, what 10 quarterbacks are better than Lamar? Matthew Stafford was on that list, and Matthew Stafford looked terrible on Thursday night. Dak Prescott was on that list. Dak Prescott looked terrible on Sunday night. So they can, like, people can say what they want, but it's clear that this isn't just a football driven conversation that we're having right now. There's something underlying there that they have an issue with this dude about, and Lamar's different. Lamar goes about it different. He's not the star quarterback that wants to be in the camera all the time. He's not the star quarterback that's looking to say something for a headline every week. You don't know his circle. His circle is super small. And I think that's why a lot of the media doesn't really like Lamar. A lot of the national media, at least, they have an issue with Lamar. He's the biggest story in football right now, he and his contract. And nobody in the media from the top guys to even the local media, none of us know exactly what's going on with Lamar and his contract situation. And I think that's what upsets people the most, is that they don't have that inside guy to be able to feed them the information, because Lamar's not telling you anything. His circle is so small, it looks like a period at this point. And the Ravens have done a good job of kind of keeping it under wraps themselves. Now, you've had certain stories leaked this past week, but for the most part, as in terms of this contract negotiation, details haven't really been out there for the most part. But I just think that Lamar, at the end of the day, I don't think it phases him. The fact that he's maybe the most disrespected player in the league, I think if anything else, it motivates him to go out there, continue to do what he does. And you saw Sunday, he has a variety of ways to beat you. He didn't run the ball. It was more so with the throwing, but I will say the Ravens as a team struggled in the run game. And usually the Ravens are really good running the ball. They didn't really run the ball well Sunday. They didn't really run the ball well at all last year either. But they've got some guys on the way back. J.K. Dobbins being on the way back. I don't think it's a good thing for the Ravens to have to depend on Lamar solely for their running attack. You can't. That's a recipe for disaster if your quarterback is your sole provider in the pass game and your sole provider in the rushing attack. His legs should be used as a bonus, not as necessity. And I think that's the way you'll see Lamar approach these games. Now, you saw it Sunday. He's going to run if he has to, but even on the read options, he's handed it off. So I think he wants to show that well-roundedness in his game, and Sunday was a good start.
Listen, you make a lot of great points. And again, we're talking to Cordell Woodland. Follow him at Cordell Woodland on Twitter. Covers the Orioles and the Ravens for 105.7 The Fan. Also a host of Shaking It Up Sports. You mentioned about his circle being tight. And you're gonna, the more we get to know each other, I'm a real big comparison guy in the sense that, I look at these undervalued players that aren't talked about enough. And I want to ask you a kind of off-topic question here about that, because a guy that I truly respect in a different sport in the NBA, who I think doesn't get enough love because his circle was tight, because he was quiet, was Tim Duncan. Mm-hmm. And I feel like, this could be the same kind of scenario. Just because you're quiet, you don't pop off to the media, you don't have this huge rap sheet. Honestly, it's ridiculous, because we teach our youth to come up and to be tight and to be close-minded and to make sure you make right decisions. Then when you get the people that do, they don't get the accolades because they're not popping off to the paper. So, I mean, do you think that's a fair, assessment right there? Because Tim Duncan, again, he was the one guy who did it all that nobody talks about.
Oh, no question. I mean, Lamar's going to need some rings, to kind of compare to Timmy D's, but as far as that demeanor, that just, look, I'm here to work and, then go home. Yep. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely that. These aren't guys that are looking to crash the internet, so to speak, with what they're saying to the media. Now, Lamar has his antics on Twitter and stuff. He can be a bit of a troll. A week or two ago, he's out there liking Photoshop pictures of him in a Dolphins jersey, and he's engaging with fans, and he's arguing with certain people of the national media at times, or former players. Like he's been a different guy this offseason, and I think some of it gets a little frustrating for him. He's a human. Yes. The person can only take but so much, and this social media age, we see that these players are kind of talked at in a different light than they used to be back in the day. So sometimes he gets in the mode where he wants to clap back, and I can't say that I blame him. But yeah, I do like the comparison to Tim Duncan, because he's a guy that he's very quiet when he talks to you. I mean, he's not a quiet guy amongst his teammates. He has a personality. Definitely, right. Lamar has a personality, but just when it comes to feeding the media and talking, publicly, he's not going to give you much. He's a short answer type of guy, and you just got to take it and roll with it.
I don't know how they do it, to be honest with you. You talked about people clapping back. It's like, I say it all the time. It's like everybody with a microphone in their mom's basement thinks they're an analyst and just wants to pop off to everybody and don't think there should be any consequences. I think it's ridiculous. So I applaud these players for going back, and I love it. And it's funny, you talk about trolls. Listen, we got one of the biggest in Joel Embiid right here in this town in Philly. So I know all about that. But let me ask you this, because I think before I get into a couple more questions about the future of the Ravens, I think obviously he started in Philadelphia, and I'm going to talk about John Harbaugh for a minute, because I do think this is the perfect coach. There's two guys, I always say, Cordell, that two coaches in NFL. For me, if I was starting a franchise, I would want one of them. One is Mike Tomlin. Two is John Harbaugh. And I just think that these guys come from a different breed. And this is the one guy that can keep Lamar on track. He is pretty clear and concise. It as covering the team. I mean, he is an advocate for his players, doesn't get involved in all that background noise, and he keeps these guys driven. So, I mean, in my opinion, is there any reason to believe that he's not like the perfect coach for this situation?
I think you're right on. They're tied at the hip. I mean, you think back to Lamar's rookie year, the Ravens were losing. I think they were 4-6 at the time when Lamar took over or something like that, and they ended up winning the last 6 games. But Harbs was on his way out, and you could make the argument that Lamar saved his job.
Yeah,
and you go to 2019 when Lamar won that MVP. Well, guess what? John Harbaugh won Coach of the Year that year. So their success is definitely tied at the hip. I think that they definitely they play off each other very well. Harbs, you talked about him being kind of an advocate for his players. He's also a guy that believes in his players. There are endless clips out there of Harbs on 4th down situations going to Lamar. Hey, what do you think? You want to go for it? What do you want to do here? He's going to his other captains on his team, asking them what they think. He puts the game in the players' hands because he trusts his guys. That's the type of coach you want to play for. He's definitely a no-nonsense type of coach. You talked about Mike Tomlin. They're both cut from the same cloth in that regard. They're straightforward, straight shooters. They want to do whatever they possibly can to get to have that competitive edge on game day. And sometimes that includes kind of toying around with the media a little bit. And that could get frustrating at times, but all in all, Harbs, I think he's a great guy. He's usually a pleasure to deal with out there. Every coach has their moments, but as far as his fit with this organization, the Ravens have a certain type of culture, and John Harbaugh fits that culture perfectly. He expects that from his players, and his players give that to him. I don't think that the Ravens could ask for a better coach in this situation, and especially just if we're talking about specifically Lamar, because Lamar has a unique skill set coming out. And I'd be lying to you if I said that I thought that if Lamar was drafted by any team in the league, that he'd be who he is today. I think it takes a certain type of franchise and a certain type of coach to be willing to adapt to the type of play style that Lamar has, and to be able to put together a type of scheme that makes him and the rest of your team successful. Because a lot of coaches are stubborn, and they're not, they're going to put together a game plan that they like, not the one that's going to best suit the players that they have. So definitely you got to give credit to Harbs for willing to change, his entire coaching style, so to speak, for a player that should be looked at as one of the better players in this league.
Yeah, that's a great point. And speaking of horrors, I mean, here's a guy who was a special teams coach, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's off the Andy Reid tree. So we all talk about Andy Reid. He's off the Andy Reid tree, and you make a great point. You mentioned about being tied to the hip. Speaking of tied to the hip, let me just ask you a quick question about Mark Andrews, because obviously, coming in, these guys are tied to the hip, Lamar and Mark. Now, I said underwhelmed, and the run she sent you over. 5 for 52, 7 targets. I think maybe from a perspective of knowing he was going to be the number one target again, we expected a little more. It might have been game script. It was the Jets.
Right.
I mean, I think they kind of let off the gas a little bit, and then you had those huge plays of Devin Duvernay, who I absolutely love. So 2-part question. Number one, do you feel like this is going to be a distribution of the rock, so to speak, for going on week to week? And do you expect Mark Andrews to have the same kind of Pro Bowl year he had last year as well, even in this offense?
Well, I think last year would be tough for Mark Andrews to repeat. He was an all-pro. He set franchise records for receiving yards, and I think he had over 1,300 yards receiving last year. I mean, he was a complete monster. I don't know if he'll duplicate that, simply because, number one, you touched on it, teams, it's out there, and it's been out there for a while, but it's another year. Team defenses are going to scheme up a little better for you. He's going to see different looks. And I think throughout the course of the season, you'll see that change. But also because the Ravens do have more weapons at their disposal this year than I think they get credit for. Rashad Bateman, who caught the 55-yard touchdown. Duvernay, who had the 2 touchdown catches in that game. Isaiah Likely is still one to watch out for. I know he had a down days, first real game as a rookie, 0 catches on 4 targets, had a couple of holding penalties. It was a terrible day for Isaiah Likely, but I truly believe as the season goes on, this is going to be a guy that's going to be a big-time focal point in this Ravens offense. So I think a combination of both of those factors, between defenses catching on and the Ravens having more options, you're going to see his numbers go down. But I do still think that Andrews, when it's all said and done, will be the team's leading receiver. I still expect him to be looked at as one of the best tight ends in football because, while we're sitting here talking about defenses catching on to Mark Andrews, you got a situation in Kansas City where Travis Kelce is clearly the number one guy, especially now with Tyreek Hill gone, and he was eating on Sunday. So it still works out at some point, even though that he's going to get the ball, he still got to find a way to make an impact on the game. I thought Sunday was just a situation where the Ravens didn't play any starters for the most part during the preseason. So a lot of these guys, I think it was trying to knock the rust off and really get acclimated in the second half. You saw them look more comfortable on the offensive side of the ball. And I think going into this next week game against the against the Dolphins, they're going to be forced to kind of click a little better and quicker on offense this week than they did last week, because the Dolphins are going to be looking to light up the scoreboard, no question. So to answer your question, I do think Mark Andrews is going to be potentially have another Pro Bowl year, just not put up the all-pro type numbers we necessarily saw from him last year. Devin Duvernay, I think Devin Duvernay is a really good player. I don't know if necessarily we're going to see him go for multiple touchdowns every week or even get a touchdown every week. I think it's in this Ravens offense is just going to be a situation of they've got quite a few guys that can kind of help them out, and it's just a matter of who's going to make the plays when their opportunity comes. Because I don't expect Rashad Bateman to finish every game with only 2 catches. I don't expect Mark Andrews to only have 5 catches a game. So I think it'll change. I just thought that Sunday the game was a little ugly in the first half, and the offense didn't really wake up until the second half started.
And there you go, man. Lamar Jackson talk at its best from our man Cordell Woodland, as always. Make sure you're checking us out at Heat Ratio Sports, at Win Daily Sports, and you're following the Final Judgment, where you can get that full interview. You hear Cordell so many great points when we talk about Lamar Jackson and bringing it home to Philadelphia with John Harbaugh, but He is. I mean, is there any? I gotta ask you guys, and then please respond, whether it be on YouTube, whether it be on Twitter, wherever. But is Lamar the most disrespected player in the NFL? I really think he is. At the end of the day, is the guy who just considerably never gets that top echelon talk. I mean, we watch guys. He made a great point, like Matthew Stafford. I listen, there was guys, and watch the end of the interview for all you people that hate Dallas haters out there, as I am one of them, obviously, because I bleed green. But you're going to like what Cordell says at the end. So make sure you follow him at Cordell Woodland. Watch all his stuff, the Shake It Off show, 105.7 The Fan. The guy does tremendous work, very opinionated. He will be back on the program, in a couple weeks. We're going to get him back on. I want to reach out and get his opinions just on the overall NFL landscape as well, because he has a lot to say, and I love people that have a lot to say. Now, a couple more random judgments. And number one is, what about Javon? Yeah, definitely. Exactly. Javon says Lamar is definitely disrespected for someone who has an MVP. I mean, he's listed below guys like Dak Prescott on some of these lists, which is ridiculous. I don't understand it. Again, from a fantasy perspective, I said at sometimes that I just felt like maybe people were overvaluing him. But from an NFL perspective, as an NFL quarterback, as a leader of a team, okay, as a leader of a team that has nothing, we should be very used to this in the town of Philadelphia, because we watched this right with Donovan McNabb. I've said this so many times. Donovan had nobody. He had nobody. He was always meant to be the guy, right? He was always meant to be the guy. Donovan would just make things happen. And here goes Lamar doing the same thing. Is it kind of obvious that it's coming from the Andy Reid coaching tree? I don't know. Sometimes I think they put too much on these quarterbacks' shoulders and they expect them just to be magic men all the time. And I get it, because they get paid the most money and they get the accountability of the team when they win or they lose. I understand all that, but it's, you got to give them guys some toys. I mean, we watched it here in Philadelphia last week in week one. When, the receivers make the quarterback. Yeah, some of the throws from Jalen Hurts weren't the best. The throw to A.J. Brown was spot on for all the people that say he can't throw a deep ball. But there's always going to be passes that behind the shoulder grabs. You watched it last night with Patrick Mahomes. Okay, he wasn't perfect either. So sometimes you need that receiver to make that big play, to make that quarterback. It happens. That's why T.O. was so great. That's why Randy Moss was so great. He made his quarterback look amazing. Javon says people forget why he had a down year stats-wise. Lamar still had that team in playoff contention that missed multiple players. Exactly. Great point again. Great point again by Javon Alford. I mean, listen, it's again, this is what I'm talking about. I think people are so narrow-minded when they watch it, and they feed into the national narrative so much. They hear a couple things. They don't go dive deep into the stats. They don't dive into the playbook. They don't dive into the film, and they just start popping off with their own opinions without even watching the damn game. I said that before, and that goes for all the people throwing out picks from sports betting as well. I call them fraudulent sports bettors, because they don't even know what kind of uniform these players wear, but they're betting on them. Okay, if you want to do that for fun, that's fine, but don't pop off these picks if you have no analytics behind it. And it's the same thing when it comes to opinions. I know everybody has opinions. That's great. I have a microphone. Congratulations. Everybody can get an internet connection. Congratulations. But do some homework or do some due diligence before you throw these opinions out, if you want to pop them off to the general public. Just FYI from Tony Jigsaw Cutillo. But let's get to some random judgments. A couple times, can we just leave Ben Simmons alone? Who cares? I keep seeing this again. I'm going to start a segment called like Let It Be or something like that. I don't know. I'll get it sponsored right now. Speaking of sponsor, SEObrand.com. Make sure you're checking them out for all your digital marketing needs. They're doing some fantastic stuff over there. Been in the business for 15 years, making sure your analytics are driven, whether it be small business, big business, doesn't matter. They help everybody. Go check them out, SEObrand.com, and make sure you tell them you heard first on the Final Judgment and Tony Jigsaw Cutillo sent you. Now, Ben Simmons. We're going to start seeing the footage. Now, all of a sudden, Ben Simmons has a jumper. Now, all of a sudden, Ben Simmons makes shots. And honestly, who really cares? Honestly, why do we keep feeding in to these players' alter egos? Why do we keep doing it? He doesn't care. Why do we care? He's not here anymore. right? If you want to care about it because you're Brooklyn, that's fine. If you want to care about it because you're an NBA fan, that's fine. But why are the people in Philadelphia so hell-bent on watching Ben Simmons? Who cares? He's not a part of this team. He was never going to be a part of this team. He's done now. We need to focus on what we need to do to win a championship here. And that starts with James Harden and Joel Embiid. And that starts with the budding superstar of Tyrese Maxey. That starts with Tobias Harris, who needs to earn his money even more this year. Just throwing it out there. So please let Ben Simmons go. I don't care about these quick clips of Instagram and he's at Wimbledon and he's hitting 3-point shots in the gym at LA Fitness. Nobody really cares. Let it go. And another thing to let it go, why do we really care about Tom Brady and Gisele Bündchen? Seriously, at the end of the day, okay, a high-profile couple, I get it. TMZ, oh, they're not happy. Gisele comes out. I'm not happy. Went back to football. Now they're living separate lives. Honestly, really, I mean, we have so much going on in the world right now. So much. So many more people need our thoughts than Tom Brady and Gisele Bündchen's marriage. Okay, if you care from a perspective of, is Tom Brady going to win my bet because he's focused, or I have futures on Tampa Bay or about winning another Super Bowl, okay, I get it. But if you're just an average sports fan and worried about what these two are going to do, walking down the aisle or taking rings off or whatever the hell they're doing, please, man, take that thought. Okay, give it a couple, maybe 2 or 5 seconds. Think about it and put that thought into something that actually matters for us. Okay. Like trying to save world hunger or trying to find out why this world is so jealous, in the sense that we live in such a jealous society where everybody wants what everybody else has and aren't willing to actually work to get what they want. Okay. They just want to take it. So why don't you start putting your mind into that when we talk about thoughts and direction. So let's have some fun with this final judgment here, judgment number 3. And again, I stole this off of CBS Sports. Ain't gonna lie, but it was a big 4, right? They had a foursome, going up against each other. And I love the big 3 kind of concept. Shout out to Ice Cube for making it so electric. I love the big 3. I used to love it when we used to play what was it? NBA Double Dribble for Nintendo, or NBA Jam. I know it was a 2-on-2 concept. I know everybody loved that, but I love the 3-on-3 concept, the black top kind of concept. And I have 2 threesomes, no pun intended, that I want to throw out there to see what you guys would rather have. Okay, if you could see this play out on the court. The threesome number 1 that we're going to throw out there is going to be Giannis, Steph Curry, and Luka Doncic. So you're starting with Giannis, Steph Curry, and Luka Doncic going up against our town's hero in Joel Embiid, the King, LeBron James, and hot man Damian Lillard. So you're going Embiid, LeBron, and Dame, or are you going Giannis, Steph, and Luka? I think this is a great comparison here, or a great tally, I should say, one against the other, because I think both of these teams of these threes can really do some fantastic stuff. I think people forget sometimes how young Luka Doncic really is and how special he could be. And again, I get it. He's not come up huge in certain games and this and that, but I think you have to look at it. If you look at the age factor of these 2 threesomes, I mean, listen, Giannis for all accounts is the best player in the NBA. I don't think we get any disagreement there. I think he's shown it year after year, the steady improvement, and he'll probably improve again. I mean, his shot was light years ahead of where it was 2 years ago last year. Steph Curry getting on that GOAT list by winning another chip. Congratulations to him, and probably the most symbolic one he's ever won, because it basically was all Steph. And then Luka, he does everything. He's a human highlight reel, besides Dominic Wilkins. He really is. On both sides of the court, he does it all. So, and he's young, under 26 years old. I mean, he's in his prime, or actually hasn't even hit his prime yet. Prime was like 27 to 32. And Luka's still even getting there, and he is that good. And then we go on the flip side, and we talk Joel Embiid, which we all talk about in this town for obvious reasons. Joel Embiid is a legend, and he will continue to be a legend. And could be a legend on Twitter as a troll as well. But that's another story for another day. But you're teaming him up with one of the greatest of all time, and LeBron, even though he's not my GOAT, still going to be on a GOAT list, obviously. and then the buzzer beater man himself, Mr. Damian Lillard. So I'm going to throw this vote out on Twitter. So make sure you get out there, or make sure you get us in the comments, in the threads right here, and tell me who you ride with on your big three. Would you ride with Giannis, Steph, and Luka, or would you ride with Embiid, LeBron, and Dame? I think it's a great conversation point. As always, I like to bring up these discussions and make this a verdict on the final judgment. So we're going to get out of here. Final judgment here with Tony Jigsaw Cutillo again, as always, powered by Heat Ratio Sports and Win Daily Sports. Make sure you're giving both of those teams a follow on Twitter, on Instagram. Make sure you're liking that YouTube page and subscribe. And make sure you're subscribing to the Final Judgment. Most importantly, the Final Judgment on YouTube. Make sure you're subscribing and you're checking that Podcast Magic link to where you can get all our full interviews. There's stuff just on the YouTube page exclusively that you just can't get here live. So make sure you're checking that out as well. And at Judge Jigsaw on Twitter. I had a little fun with that. I like being a judge. I like laying judgments on a lot of things that comes to the world of sports. Just leave those veterans alone, man. Leave those veterans alone. But as always, make sure that you're putting your mind in the right place. I want to end with this. I want to start ending on specific points and just in everyday life. Obviously going through a lot right now with my leg. It's very frustrating. And I'll be honest with you, it's very easy to sit there and looking, staring at walls when you're kind of immobilized, so to speak, and you really can't do much. I mean, it's gorgeous out here on the East Coast. The weather's been like 65, 70 degrees, and I can't do anything. I can't walk. I can't enjoy the weather. I could sit on a bench with my leg elevated. It really sucks and starts playing with your mind and your mental psyche about, what can we do? Right. Well, and I think in society, I think the problem is we're always worried about what we can't do instead of worrying about what we can do. So try to use that concept going forward. Don't worry about what you can't do. Try to worry about what you can do. And you're in control. No pun on words here, but you're in control of your own narrative. You create your own direction. So make sure you do that. And that could be in the world of anything, whether the corporate world, whether the entrepreneurial world, it doesn't matter. You're control your own narrative. So that's my lesson of the day. Focus more on what you can do than what you can't do. As always, I am Tony Jigsaw Cutillo. This is the Final Judgment. And again, everybody, stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll catch you back here next time.